on.
Salesman that sell insurance.
Okay, now that's like,
There we are.
There you
There
are.
we
How
are,
about
yes.
that?
Hey. Hi. Still like I'm joining my own video, so I don't know how to come in as the host. It just says join. So it's good. I'm on full screen. Are we all good? You can hear me well?
yes.
Yes,
Can you
very
hear?
well.
Can you hear him?
Yes, I
Okay,
can.
good.
Now,
Excellent.
one thing, you need to introduce all of us, who our names, dates, and then the subject, and the
Right.
date. The date today, what is it, August 1st?
This is August 2nd,
So,
2020.
and 2020, and all of that. So that's recorded then.
We're
And
recording.
20 years from now, they will.
We are recording.
Yeah, we are recording. So yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So just getting going. This is great. You guys are in Loveland, Colorado, and I'm in Wheat Ridge, Colorado. And we're doing a Zoom call on August 2nd, 2020. And this is Tom Ryan, Barbara Engelhardt, and Dan Ryan. I'm Dan, Tom's son. And so a century from now, we'll all look alike, and everybody will be looking at our funny hairstyles and glasses.
Yes, yes.
What is those funny things on your head, sort of
Yeah.
thing?
I think the story we're going to tell today is one that's very rare today, but I got a feeling that it'll sound much more modern to people as we go on. People are moving around from church to church a lot more than they did in the past. And so our faith journeys will not seem so strange to people of the future or even to the present. They would have to my parents, and all of our parents, I think, would be surprised to hear this. I mean, they never dreamed that we would leave the Catholic Church. I grew up a Catholic, and Barbara grew up the daughter of a Protestant minister. So
Yeah.
that was unheard of in my parents' day, that we should end up being married. Not so much today.
Well,
Things are different.
there was a certain language in the church 100 years ago. There is now certain terms we use for church going, like a faith walk is definitely a new 70s and 80s term. So is denomination, for that matter, or congregation. The congregation is more a generic word because that's used outside of church, but there's a lot of church language that is going away. A lot of people don't want to be labeled with a denomination or a label like that. So it's interesting just getting the language of today on.
People go church shopping. They
Yes.
literally go around from one church to another and try them out and decide which one they want to join.
Or if they don't really want to join a church, they'll say, I'm not religious, but I have spirituality.
Yes.
I am spiritual. And so that leaves the door open for any kind of a belief that you want to have without getting caught up in church politics, church fights. Every church I've ever been to has at one point or another had some kind of a huge argument going on, sometimes leading to breakups and hard feelings.
To people that are not used to church politics and things that seem so ridiculous to argue about a certain point and make that be a chasm or a schism and start whole new denominations from just one small difference. But it is a difference, and it's important at the time, and that's all we can really do in our faith walk is really act on what's important to us right now, because always thinking you are going to do something for your children or for your parents or for history, either side of that doesn't give you much of a now. And I think there's right now a lot more of the now, what means to me now, and so be it that we have a certain description for that. You know, it's just dialogue, and I think it's important that we take it seriously. So
I think in the past, people felt that what they believed was very important, and they would slice and dice everything. And exactly what did you believe about evolution, or what do you believe? And then that determined your faith, it was your belief. I think now that isn't so important. That you'll have people in the same church, same congregation, that have many different beliefs, but they have something in common, or they wouldn't be meeting together every Sunday.
yeah, do you think on the average do you go to church to see your friends and those you love and respect, or do you go to hear a sermon? You know, I guess that's really.
And different people will be there for different reasons.
You know, for many years, Dan, I was a church organist, and I went to church partly because I had a job there, but I don't think the faith mattered so much as the music. And I got my spirituality, and my soul was fed through the music that I was a part of. And I think that kept me going for a long time, because, early on, I had great doubts about matters of faith and dogma and belief, but the music would always bring me back. So, and now I think it's, like you were saying, friends and relationships that we have. And of course, meeting Tom at church was wonderful.
We met each other in the new member
Great,
class. Both were
thing.
joining the church in the same group. So, and we didn't know each other before that. So we think it's a wonderful church. I think congregations are more important than denominations too now. Church groups vary greatly from one church to another, often more than they do from one denomination to another.
Yeah, right.
So when you say what denomination it is, you need to also know the peculiarities of your congregation. I know, Dan, you said that you belong to a congregation that welcomes gay people to join. And so it would be thought of as a church that is welcoming to gay people, and not, I don't know what the denomination is. That probably matters the least, what the name of the denomination.
That's right.
Is that true?
That's true. And we joined a church right back in our old neighborhood that had been there the whole 10 years we lived there in the Highlands of Denver. And we never went, but we were led back there by a couple of people that said, this is a very inclusive social justice church. And it just happens to be an old Methodist building. So a lot of people judge a book by its cover and never want to go into that old dusty church. But it was a very new message and a new congregation, very inclusive of all races and genders, and very socially and community active. And that's what we were interested in. It just happened to be a United Methodist Church, but it had been around for 127 years, I think, since it started. And they built the building 107 years ago or something. But it's really a ton of history. But obviously, the people that started that are gone, and it continued on in a new fashion in a new neighborhood where almost everything was 100 years old, but all of the families were new. And so it's a really interesting dynamic. In the old neighborhood is now the trendy young families and professionals and higher incomes. And, it's a completely different parish and or congregation. So it's really is more about that, what's happening now, what is, you can lean on some of the old traditions and things, but I think that's what people really want to somewhat disassociate from is, this is not your daddy's Cadillac, sort of. This is something that I chose, and it's important to people now more so than this is where my great grandfather went, and so I have the faith because my parents did and my grandparents did. That's not as important to me. It is because I've been led in great directions by my parents, but it has not always been that way for my friends, and they have had to find it on their own. And for instance, I'm finding new relationship with a buddy in Germany who moved there, but we were roommates in Denver, and his wife passed away shortly after they moved to Germany. She's German. And when she passed away, he was kind of left there as this American now without any friends or very little family. She had a son there who's very, very active with Jim. And so Jim and I talk over social media, and he shares a lot about his decisions now, what he has to do to make a life. And a lot of that is his faith journey. So kind of in the same subject matter, he's in this country that he doesn't, that he's an alien and a foreigner, but he wants to find commonality in his faith. And so talking about how he goes about doing that and finding English-speaking congregations, that's how he and I met. And so it's interesting how that goes around the world and back. He may not stay in Germany because he can't afford it, but he doesn't have any idea where he wants to be. It's an interesting thing. And as a retired person, he's a little older than me, so he's about 64. And he could jump on a motorcycle and tour Europe, or he could move back to the States and settle somewhere. He's really a free wheel, and it's exciting and scary at the same time. So I think a lot of people are in their faith walk, in their rediscovering in their midlife what they really want and introducing their children to it. So I'm in that same boat myself with Sheridan, who turns 25 in about a week, and he questions his spirituality. He's a spiritual person, but he's not religious, and they really shun that word religious or Christian even. So it's something that family really helps to solidify. And so I know that'll be questions coming up in his mind that you'll still be able to help with. And that's
Sheridan,
important.
my grandson is, and Dan's son, is not unusual. And of my other grandchildren, they're all over. I mean, they live in Ireland. Catholic Ireland isn't so Catholic anymore. They just voted in abortion is legal now in Ireland. And among other things, the church does not have the control and the unanimous appeal of the people. And they lived there in Ireland. And when they were in college, they met Kelly and Jake Musler at college in the pagan club. And so they were pagans. What
Wiccan is
Wiccan,
another,
I think Wiccan, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where they met, and so I don't know if they really practiced that in Ireland, because I think it got its start over in Ireland before there were Catholics even. But also, our other son Kevin married a Japanese woman, and they got married in a Lutheran church in Japan, but they weren't Lutherans. Why did you join a Lutheran church? Well, they only charged $1,000, and Japanese weddings normally cost about $20,000.
Oh,
So they went over and talked to the Lutheran pastor who spoke English. That was another advantage. But we have children who are all over the place. But when we started out, we were all Catholic. And I married a Catholic, and Barbara married Ivan, and he was same religion.
He was congregational.
Congregational.
And I was from the Evangelical and Reformed denomination. And this is a coincidence, but the year we were married, those two denominations merged to form the United Church of Christ. So we were married, and our two churches, our two denominations merged the same year. And then when I moved to Loveland, we went to his congregational church.
But later you joined the
Then we joined
Presbyterian church. And that was because the children had a better youth group, you said. It wasn't theological. It was a kind of...
Yeah, the Congregationalist church here in Loveland was very conservative, very old-fashioned and strict. And neither Ivan or I fit in theologically with them. And the other thing was they didn't have any kind of a youth group at all. So we had these 4 kids. And so we decided to go to the Presbyterian church. That was a real wrenching decision for me because my father was part of that congregation, and my brother and a couple of nephews and nieces, and the school that we went to was that denomination. So at that point, the denominations were really, really important. Now they're not so much. And Presbyterians and UCC, they're very, very similar.
Or could be very different depending on the particular church or
congregation. That's
more
right.
than the denomination. So we found that. I look back with fond memories of my growing up in the Catholic Church. I have no quarrel or think that they are bad or that they did anything bad to me. In fact, good things for me. I can remember that I read The 7-Story Mountain when I was 18 years old. And it was about a man's story about Thomas Merton, how he went from being an agnostic to being a monk in a Cistercian monastery in Gethsemane, Kentucky. And I wanted to join. I thought that'd be wonderful to be a Catholic priest. Well, that didn't go anywhere, but when I left the Catholic Church, it wasn't because I was unhappy with them. It was some things. We sat in our car in the parking lot at the Catholic Church, and I looked up and I saw everybody rushing out of the parking lot. We'd always say the Catholics can't wait to get out of there. They almost honk their horns at each other to get out of the parking lot. And I said, I don't think our kids are going to stay in this church. I don't think they'll be happy here. And maybe the answer is for us to join one where they will be happy. And so we too, one of the reasons we joined the Church of the Brethren was because they had a wonderful youth group.
That's interesting. So, I didn't connect that.
Yes. And there were a lot of pastors' kids because the church happened to be the headquarters church of the denomination. And we had a lot of pastors in the congregation, and their children were in the youth group. And they were interesting kids who had been born sometimes in foreign countries. And so that was a draw, I think it was, for the kids. You enjoyed the youth group, didn't you, Dan?
Yes, I met a lot of friends I still stay in touch with from all those years ago. So this is 45, 47 years ago that we joined that. So long-lasting relationships, and people that I even went to on trips with for missions are still friends and reconnected through social media. So it keeps you connected, and you share stories and experiences. And I think that's probably my best value through that is my faith has a connection. The messages we all heard have commonality. Yeah.
I think we believe, but we believe different things, or at least the rank of importance of what we believe is different than it was when we were young and our parents beliefs. And beliefs are not nearly as important as the relationship between you and the other congregation members. I think that's the body of Christ, we call it. And I think those people, if they, to us, represent, then we have that relationship, and we find Christ in other people. And I think that's where, if we find a congregation where we find Christ in a lot of the people.
So here's the question then, for your faith walk. What is the most important aspect or value that you find in it? Is it what you think and what you may even write down in some book somewhere? Or is it what you do and who you do it for?
Kevin went to Japan and married, and he he volunteered in the Church of the Brethren. It was they had a BVS, Brethren Volunteer Service, and went to China with his new wife, and they spent a year teaching Chinese people English so they could go to America and get education. And so that, and as I said, he got married in a Lutheran church. It never was anything Lutheran except when he got married. So that, but your route, when you came to Colorado, you joined a church here that was very different from the Catholic Church, certainly, that you left, and the Church of the Brethren. You had gone through confirmation in the Catholic Church, and then you became Church of the Brethren in the youth group, and then you came to Colorado and you became, what was the name of the church?
Well,
Tell us about it.
Yeah, at first my faith walk took me as an invitation when you as a parent and Paul Rohr as his parent, both living back in Elgin, and you both told us about the Brethren Church and that we should go back and visit that, because Paul was living in Colorado and I was living in Colorado. We ended up finding out we lived blocks apart and didn't know it. And so not only did we reconnect, but we went to the Church of the Brethren together just to check out the ladies because we were both single, right? And so instead of going to bars, we went to church, and that's where Paul met his wife, Barbara. Her name is Barbara as well. And we actually went on a double date, and her friend bagged it at the last minute. So Paul and I both went out with Barb by ourselves, and long story short, he won. He started dating Barbara, and I didn't. And they stayed in the Brethren Church, and I went to another church that I was introduced to by some business friends of mine. And I went to an evangelical church called City on the Hill Church, and that started a whole born-again Christian experience for me. But again, I ask you the question, what is the best thing that you, as a young man, when you became a Christian, whenever that moment was, or whenever that era was, what is the most important part of that? Do you think it's what you believe and can pass on in a heritage fashion, or is it what you do, what you actually give to the community? What is the biggest value to you in being a Christian and having faith? I mean, you personally.
Well, when Barbara and I first got married, we picked up on this idea that you can never say I love you or thank you too many times. Mm-hmm. And I think that my faith is embodied in that. And then the other thing we said, relationships are important. They're so important. Relationships are everything. So relationships and love and gratitude for what you've had were the basis of became the basis of my theology, and that I should be concerned about other people more than myself. And this get your battle in life is against the I, and in favor of the we, our, you, and not all I. And that I think would sum up my theology. Barbara, what?
Well, I would say I agree with that, especially the part about love. So in the Bible, it says God is love. And I believe that that sums it up. And also, love is God. Love is, I think, the most important thing we can cultivate and cherish and practice in our lives. Love of God, love of nature, love of other people, respect, empathy, all of those qualities, I think, were embodied in Jesus Christ and in the Buddha and in other religions. It seems like love is a theme that goes through all religions. And also the fact that God is really a mystery. We tend to think of God in human terms because we're human, and we can't think on God's terms because God is much more than a human. He's not an old man with a beard up in the sky. So to comprehend God takes a lifetime, and you never get done pondering or trying to experience God. But I think through love, you can get as close as you possibly can to God.
That's what led me to the Church of the Brethren, and our whole family joined the Church of the Brethren in Colorado, Denver, Colorado, before we left on sabbatical and went back home to Elgin, Illinois. And then we belonged to the Highland Avenue Church. And there I saw a lot of love. And right at that time, we were marching with Martin Luther King, and his message was love. And Gandhi, he followed Gandhi's thoughts about love. And I marched in parades for equality and justice for Black people, and also against the war. The Brethren were pacifists, and they were against war. And so we were against the war in Vietnam. And I marched with them. And we sang, "We Shall Overcome Someday." I think that that was all connected with love of humanity, and it was wrong to kill people in war. But I went into the Army, and I served my time in the Army, and luckily I never shot at anybody, and no one ever shot at me during my time in the Army. But a lot of the brethren did the same. They were torn whether to serve their time in service, but they certainly loved their fellow man and had missions all over the world. And I even went to Africa for a short I was a missionary relief worker. And I think, and Barbara's done the same with her churches. So we're brothers of all the people of the world. But Dan, you didn't say anything about, you left the Church of the Brethren too, as we did, and in Colorado. And as I remember, you even lived at the church. Yes. And what was that all about?
Well, for me, it was really as a single person, I was looking for something more valuable than just the single life at, partying or going to bars and, meeting women and doing singles things, and starting a business and other things that that I was doing at the time. I was looking for something more, and it was a void that I felt. I wanted to do something bigger, give something back to the community, but more than that, learn fundamentals that I could really live by. And so I was lucky to be under the leadership of real Bible scholars, and I learned a lot in Bible studies and sermons and series and retreats and a lot of things that I didn't believe the Catholic Church was doing as much of, or the Brethren Church for that matter. There are different strengths with every congregation. This was really a coming together of individuals, everybody trying to learn the word to live by, and examples on how to give that out to the community. And so that's my question to you really, is when you have a faith, you have a message, you have the word of God, how do you give that? Is it valuable to you to give it to the community in maybe not even preaching, but how do you extend the love of Jesus Christ to not only your family, but the extended community? And I guess that's the difference with having heritage faith and giving to your family and hanging together, and having a faith that is more evangelical, where you're giving that message out to strangers, to a wider congregation. And that's part that I did. Did you find that it was easier to do outside the Catholic Church for you to feel more fulfillment in showing love in the community when you joined the Brethren Church and then subsequently the Presbyterian Church in between? Is it easier to do?
All the churches claim that the Bible is the most important, but some it's more important than others. And having a list of beliefs that you have is what binds you together. Church of the Brethren, I always remember when a man evangelical asked him, "Have you been saved, brother?"
Yeah.
And the brethren answered, "Well, I'm not sure of that. I think you'd have to ask my wife and my neighbor and maybe my children. And there's a lot of other people that would be better able to judge whether I've been saved than myself." And I think that sums up the brethren didn't get so excited about, although they were Anabaptists and they baptized as adults rather than as babies, their faith was firm, but it was flexible, I guess I'd call it. And they weren't all locked into a 12 things you must believe, that the world was created in 7 days or something, or that even whether Paul was knocked off a horse. And of course, that's where the evangelicals, I guess, get that, "Are you saved, brother?" You had to have some experience like getting knocked off a horse. And now there's doubts whether Paul had any horse at all, because he wouldn't have a horse if he, in his social class.
Maybe
and
it's
so
a donkey.
He had a donkey maybe. And they get in big arguments whether it was a donkey or a horse, or there was nothing there. He just got knocked on the ground. And that was not Brethren. And it isn't Catholic either. They just said, "This is the way it is. We're not going to discuss it at all." There's no discussing it. The truth comes down from above. And in the Church of the Brethren, they were very loving. And so if someone believed something different, they would accept that. That's okay. You can believe that. And I like that very much. But when we came here to Colorado, we tried the Church of the Brethren here, and that didn't work out. And we ended up in this Presbyterian church, and I met Barbara there. So that really cemented. I talk about meaningful relationship. I had a big relationship to the
Yeah,
church
and
here.
again, it was really about congregation. You know, the congregation wasn't the same, the mix wasn't the
Right.
same, the dynamic wasn't, and you have to find that, you know, to be able to, you know, sow your faith and cultivate it, right? And it sometimes it just sows better in different soil. And the big difference when Paul got knocked off his horse wasn't that he got knocked down, but when he got up, he was blind. Okay, so that the rest of that story is he was blind and they had to lead him. He was this powerful man, a lawyer and a Pharisee and all these great things he was, but he was had to be led like a child into the city and directed. And that gave him some time to think about what just happened. And that is the real impact of what he had is when the man of faith came to him and
He had to start all over.
yeah, and
All his
he
learning
gives,
was
gives you time to
thrown
think
into a
about it.
cocktail. He changed,
Yeah,
like we were changing too.
right.
But
And it was really about taking some time to think about what you're doing with your faith walk, and it gave him some time to realize that he was the persecutor, he was the bully, he was the one that was coming to straighten out the church, and God had different plans for him. He said, first you got to get your head right, you got to get yourself straight. And that was the real message to me in that story. Said, hey,
that story.
yeah, the road to Damascus was his real conversion, right? So
Barbara, you left the Presbyterian Church to come to the Presbyterian Church where we met.
Yeah.
Now, why would you change not denomination, but congregation, especially when you'd worked there and knew everybody and worked there every day in that congregation you left and came over to where I was?
Well, I have to say that was probably mostly because there was a difference in belief and faith, things of faith that were important for Mountain Viewers that it was no longer important for me. I wanted something that was more inclusive.
mhm.
And I found that in First United Presbyterian Church. Like Tom said, you could go there and believe everything or believe nothing, and you were accepted and you were loved, and you could work together as a community and work in the community and worship together. And so that was really important to me, that it wasn't such a strict, tightly bound set of beliefs and rules. One example is the idea of gay marriage, and the Mountain View Church felt that homosexuality was a sin, and you should love a sinner, but don't encourage the sinful act. And to me, I that really bothered me a lot. I didn't believe that way, and that was one important reason why I left that church. The other reason why I wanted to go to this other church was they had a beautiful pipe organ, and of course, my heart melts when I hear a beautiful organ. So that was a double reason. A third reason is it was just 3 blocks from my house. So
Yeah.
all those things came together for me.
That helps. You can spend more time doing that. And
That's right.
sometimes it's the music is better or there's a better organ to play, right? So you have
Right, exactly.
exactly. Well, we have 2 minutes left.
2 minutes. We've talked.
Yeah, I know it goes very, very fast. And I guess that we could wrap it up with just asking each one of you, what is the highest calling for us as human beings, regardless of spirituality or religion? What is the highest calling for us as human beings? I know they could talk for days on that, but
yeah, I can give a short one. Just serve others, and that's your highest calling.
I would agree with that. Yeah, and also serving with a sense of humility,
mm-hmm.
that you personally don't know everything. You don't know everything about the other person you're serving. So don't be judgmental about them. Just love them, give them what they need, Listen, and don't think you know everything. That is, to me, very important.
Right.
And for me, it's what a young man's conversation between Sheridan and a friend of his, and it really struck me. But it says it all. Really, is that if we can treat all each other, every person we meet, everyone as equals, it will solve most of the problems of the world.
Absolutely.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you, Dan, for doing this.
Yeah, I know I've got like 40 more questions, so we're going to have to do this.
We're going to have to do this again. Good.
Yes, definitely.
All right.
And
Now,
I'll get the recording out and we'll work this. I don't think there's anything to edit. It's all beautiful. Yeah.
now, can you get it out so we can hear it on what, YouTube or what?
Yeah, it's a file, so it'll go to my computer, and I think I can send it to you. It'll be a 45-minute file. So,
Okay,
find out if
good.
I put that on a flash drive to give you. So, this is my mask for the pandemic of 2020, and that's what I have to go out in public with. But I'm really glad that we can do this, and there's no virus going the other way.
That was good. I think that was very wonderful. I liked it very much.
Bless you guys, and we'll see you on the next Zoom call.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Love
Thank
you.
Love you too.
And thank you. And
Thank you.
you.